So please give a rapturous, warm round of applause to Mr. Alexis Kingsbury.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go into a bit of a deep dive with you today, because I know that from the way that Dan's run other sessions that he's sort of gone for a bit of an interview approach and covered lots of different areas. And so when Dan asked me to present, I thought, actually, how can I go really deep into a particular area to give you some very specific value? Because there's loads of stuff that I've taken on from being part of Mastermind over the last 4 years. And perhaps one of my weakest areas was around talent and people and managing people. In fact, there was even a time, Dan interviewed me for a podcast, I think. I think it never aired, I suspect, because of this. But he asked me about sort of bringing on people and so on. And at the time, I remember I'd been burnt 4 years ago when we were loss making. We just made people redundant. And I was talking about how basically you should try and avoid hiring people until you absolutely have to. You should automate wherever you can. I remember at the time thinking, perhaps I'm not right for this. Perhaps I shouldn't be managing people. Perhaps, Tim Ferriss, 4-hour work week, should just be hiring contractors. But then, of course, I was realizing that actually that's hiring people too. So after realizing that I couldn't grow my business without having people in it, I decided I'd take a different approach, which was to turn a weakness into a strength. And so that's what, amongst other weaknesses I've had to address, that's an area in which we have really gone from something that I'd say that I'd be worse at than most businesses into something that, we must be one of the top businesses in terms of this being our strength. So what I thought I'd do is share exactly what we did, but do so in a way that hopefully you're going to be writing a lot down, because largely I'm going to give you everything you need for probably the next year or 3 for what you should be doing as it relates to getting amazing talent into your business, finding it, getting great performance from it, and keeping it. And so for those of you that are thinking, I need to hire 3 admin assistants or whatever, this is going to be really relevant in terms of you thinking about actually how do you make sure that they're great admin assistants, not average or worse. So that's what I'm going to be covering today. A bit about me. So I'm Alexis. I'm a co-founder of SpiderGap along with my co-founder standing next to me there. We're still a small team, but a team that just 1 year ago, there were only 3 of us, and now there's 7. This was actually taken at our annual meetup in Barcelona a few weeks ago, because as Dan mentioned, we are a global company. We have customers all over the world, and so we actually have a team that's all over the world as well. From my co-founder in Sweden, we've got a guy in India, we've got we've got one in the USA, and actually you can see that even the people in the UK are not close to each other. And in fact, at the meetup, it was the first time that any of us, aside from myself and my co-founder, had met in person, including our developer who'd been working with us for about 9 months. And it was the first time that we then met in person. So everything that I share with you, I'm sharing how we found amazing talent and brought it in and so on. Bear in mind that we did that without even having people in the same room. So if you've got a business where actually you do have people in the office, in theory, that should be easier for you, not more difficult. But equally, if you're a business that does have remote teams, know that this is definitely possible in that scenario. So first question for you is, how would you rate your HR function's effectiveness? Now, you might be thinking, well, I don't have an HR function, because arguably I don't have an HR function. But there's something important here, which is that you do have an HR function, regardless of whether you have HR people. Someone in your business, quite possibly you, is responsible for finding and hiring talent and nurturing them in the business and managing them and making sure they're developing and growing. So, or maybe it's someone else in your business, but someone's doing that. So unless it's only you in the business, someone is responsible for HR. And so just to check, is there anyone in the room that their business is only them? Nope. Cool, just one. So for you, if you're thinking about how this applies, it's going to be about how you grow your team. But for everyone else, this already applies to you because you already have people. Therefore, you already have an HR function, whether you think of it like that or not. So question is, that question could be asked differently, which is, to what extent do you feel that your business attracts, finds, trains, manages and develops amazing talent. And let's do a scale from 1 to 10. So perhaps have a little think about that and put your number down on your piece of paper, and then I'd like to get a sense of temperature in the room, where you feel that you are. So everyone else think about where they are in terms of their score? Okay, so hands up if you currently think that you're 8 or above. No one. Okay, cool. This is going to be a really useful session for you. How about, let's go 5 or below. Okay, just one. Cool. So everyone else is basically sitting in the 6 and 7, right? And that's not a horrendous place to be. However, I suspect by the end of this session, you might actually lower your score. Because one of the problems is that HR is often treated as this administrative function. It's thought of as being this, in some cases, the business owner might say, it does the payroll, right? That's what HR is. Or they might say that actually HR sometimes gets in the way of what we want to do, particularly if you've hired an HR person into your business rather than doing it yourself. Some business owners might say, well, actually, HR are responsible for recruitment, but we do struggle to get good people. And others might just regard HR as basically a legal function where it protects the business owner from going to court from the various tribunals that their disgruntled employees might give. And unfortunately, that's where the expectation is, and you can't blame HR for this. You can't look at the HR person that you've hired or HR agency that you use or whatever and blame them. In the same way that you can't blame a bookkeeper if you're not managing your cash flow. If you don't ask your bookkeeper to bring you a weekly cash flow forecast, guess what? They won't. And equally, if you ask them to bring you a weekly cash flow forecast and you don't look at it, they won't tap you on the shoulder and go, oh, by the way, are you using this? It comes down to business owners and business leaders to set the expectations of what they want. So in the words that I often hear, mentored by Dan, and I believe it's said by multiple different people. I couldn't even attribute this quote because so many people have it attributed to them. But you do get what you tolerate. So if you accept that sort of low-level administrative function from HR, that is exactly what you'll get in your business. Okay. So you should think the first thing to do when we think about improving what's going on in this area is change your expectations. So thinking about what results do you expect from HR? What activities and processes are you expecting them to perform? And how and when will you measure results? So just like you would with your sales team or your operations team, whatever, thinking about actually what do we want from this area rather than just letting it atrophy and kind of imagining it's going to self-manage itself. Now the problem with that is I pose those questions to you and you might be thinking, I have no idea. I don't know what results I would want from them. I don't really know what activities they should perform. I kind of leave that to them, or we just do the things that we need to when I'm suddenly hiring someone. And you probably have no idea on what results to measure, because as a company at Spidergap that works with HR professionals, because we provide an online 360 feedback tool that enables companies to get feedback on an employee to help them prioritize their personal development. So most of our customers are HR and learning and development people in companies. And we know that even they struggle with this. They struggle with how do we measure what good looks like. So if they're struggling, how should you be expected to do? Well, the good news is that although most business leaders don't give this thought, I'm going to help you with that. And I think it's really important to do so because actually for most of you, staff will be your biggest cost in the business.
Can you just shoot back to those 3 questions, mate?
Sure. There you go. So quick show of hands. For whom in this room are staff costs your biggest cost in your business?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so just over half. What about top 2, top 3? Let's give top 3 with staff costs. Okay, so we pretty much end up with the rest of the room. So the first thing is that your staff costs are one of the biggest, if not the biggest in your business. Cool, there we go. And the second thing is that actually you need your people to reach your goals. You're not going to be able to hit where you want to hit if you haven't got great people in your business that you can leverage. And so, truthfully, if you attract and recruit average people, and you provide average training and perform an average level of management with an average amount of employee development and growth, and you lose the best people and keep the average ones, then you can expect to get average results. And a lot of people issues that you and your managers will have to deal with. Now, before Spider Gap, I was a management consultant. And often when I'd work with businesses to help them improve, like sometimes a challenge I might get is, okay, well, yeah, we're bad at this, but isn't everyone in the industry? Aren't we just average? And what I want to encourage you to do is raise your bar for this area. Because the average business in the UK with 0 to 250 employees makes £9,000 in profit per year. So if your aim is to make £9,000 in profit per year, then you can go for average. But if you want more than that from your business, then you're going to need to raise the bar from what you expect from your people, what you expect from your business in terms of the results, etc. it gets. Does that make sense? Cool. Any questions at this point? Good. So at the moment, you've probably got a slight painful feeling in your stomach, thinking, okay, I get it, I need to improve this area, but have very little idea on how to do that. And so today, I'm going to help you greatly increase your expectations from what good or great HR looks like, and actually not just say, oh yeah, we expect more from them, but exactly what that means. And I'm going to break HR down into 3 areas and define exactly what great performance in each of those areas looks like. Then I'm going to help you understand what are the tools and processes that you need in your business to be able to deliver those kinds of results. Because you're going to see those results and go, that feels so far away from where we are, I can't imagine getting there. And I'm going to give you a roadmap of exactly how you get there. However, that's going to be quite a big roadmap that might be scary in a few places and feel like is a long way off. So then at the end, I'll make sure that I identify the first few things that you can do to get you some significant progress already that you can then build on. And one thing I want to emphasize is whilst I'm a co-founder at Spider Gap, and we've defined our accountabilities, and one of my accountabilities is now like head of HR, if you like. That is by no means most of my role, right? And I don't have any HR staff. And we've done this in our business over a period of a year. And in fact, most of what I show you is probably come in a 6 to 9 month period. So I highlight that because I think you might be thinking, well, I'm just not going to have the time. I've got to focus on sales. I've got to focus on marketing. I've got 18 different changes that need to happen in the product. Guess what? So did we. And we did those things and got financial control and hired more people and did all of these things whilst putting the processes and approaches and so on in place that I'm describing. So it doesn't take a lot of time. What it takes is you understanding what needs to be done and making it one of the 5 objectives each quarter or whatever that needs to get done. And the amazing thing for us is how much it's changed things. And in fact, a big piece of why we changed things was in February of this year, we had a member of staff who we were doing really well in the recruitment, which is amazing, like really smart, but she decided to leave. And there were various contributing factors that meant that she probably would have left anyway. But definitely at the time, one of the things that my co-founder and I discussed is kind of like, yeah, we've kind of neglected her. Like, we've not done the management, the development, the growth beyond the first few months. And as a result, we've kind of let this staff member atrophy. And so that was like just 9 months ago or whatever. And so if we can do it, if we can put some of this in place in such a short period of time, in a business where we were really, really bad at it, I believe that you have exactly the same potential in your business. Okay? Cool. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm running to time, which is nice. So let's start off with what does great HR look like? And to make this a lot easier, we're going to break down HR into 3 areas, which I suggest that you write down. So the first area is all about recruitment. That's the one that most people understand most easily, which is how do you find the right people to join your organisation? Unfortunately, most people's approach to recruitment is, we'll say average, but it really depends on what bar we set. I think Dan often says in some of the masterminds that we've had in the past, he said that most people's approach to recruitment is they put an advert up, they get a few CVs, they take a look, they invite 3 to interview, 1 doesn't turn up, 1 turns up drunk, and they hire the 3rd one. And unfortunately, that is the case for a lot of businesses. So we're going to go deep onto a much, much better approach to recruitment. Secondly, onboarding. Setting people up to excel in a new role. Now, today I'm going to talk a lot of that, kind of assuming it's a new hire. So it's someone that you've just brought in as an administrative assistant, new salesperson, software developer, whatever. However, this will apply to any new role you take a staff member into. For example, if you join my organisation as a customer success representative, you essentially start off by doing demo calls, so demonstrating what the product can do for people who are interested in it. We now, this wasn't the case early on, but we can now get people up to speed and ready to do demo calls without anyone else on the call in 2 weeks. But after that, we then get them onto providing customer support and answering tickets. And after that, we get them onto customer success, which is proactive support. And after that, we get them onto account management. After that, we get them on enterprise sales. And actually, increasingly, marketing wasn't something we saw as part of that department, but actually now it is, and so we even get them involved in marketing. And so every time that they go onto a new one of those, essentially there should be some kind of onboarding so that you don't just say, oh, you're now doing support or marketing or whatever it is, and not give them a proper process that means that they're set up really quickly and can do it really well. Thirdly, management and development. And I've combined this because actually I tried to disentangle it, but there's so much that relates to both that actually it makes more sense for you to have the management and getting great performance out of your staff at the same time as developing. Because if someone's not up to grade, actually what do you want to do? Well, the managing is identifying that and having the conversation, but actually you're probably going to start by trying to develop them so that they can hit the mark and achieve their targets, etc. But then if their development isn't as fast as it needs to be, or they're not committing to it, then the management bit needs to come in where perhaps you're managing them out of the organisation or whatever. So they're very entangled, which is why I suggest think of them as one area, which is how we'll cover it today. Okay, any questions about those areas? Okay, cool. Recruitment. This is what bad recruitment looks like. I mentioned you get a few CVs, you invite 3, and a lot of organisations do that. And when people, as I meet them in masterminds and so on, they go, oh, how do you get really good, how did you get a really good PA? How did you get a really good accountant or whatever? And I say, well, how have you got your current one? And they say, well, I did perhaps it's an accountant. I did a Google. I found 2 or 1. I contacted them. They sounded sensible. So I hired them. It's like, okay, yeah, I didn't get them that way. It's like, you don't, even if I don't set out the process, just talking about what they're currently doing identifies the holes, right? And unfortunately, that's the case for most people's recruitment process. They put so few people through that process, and then they just pick the best one of a bad bunch. Better recruitment, we actually increase that pool. We get more people in, and as a result, hopefully, you've got some good people in there, and that then you can pick the best of the good people rather than just the best of a bad bunch. However, really great recruitment, we have to go a bit deeper, and I recommend writing this bit down. So really great recruitment, or particularly the bits in bold, involves a high number of applicants. Now, depending on your business, the skills you're looking for, the location you're hiring for, the number of applicants you will be able to get will vary. But for us, with a global business hiring remotely, therefore we don't have the geographic issues, for a developer role we look for 2,500 applicants, which means that technically we're 40 times harder to get into than Harvard. Now, that's not to say that you should set the same bar for 2,500 applicants if you're looking for shop assistants or in fact, it should probably be more specific. If you were looking for a very specific type of architect who needs to be living in a very specific town, then sure, even if you cast the net quite wide, you might only get 20, 30, 50 candidates. if you were looking across the whole of the UK and trying to convince them to move, and maybe even considering architect technicians who you're going to train up to be that level. But actually, even I can feel myself, even with that example, I'm starting to think, no, actually I can find ways in which I would make that broader. And particularly if you need a specific architect in this specific location, very weird example I've suddenly chosen, then don't you want a great one? And the only way to get a great one is to have lots of choice. So when you're looking for your applicants as part of it, you're going to need to greatly increase the number of people that you're looking at. Now, we can all hear the size. Tell me, what's your biggest concern?
They don't exist in our industry.
Okay, cool. Mind sharing a little bit about the industry or the specialism that makes it difficult?
We manufacture automatic door systems,
Mm-hmm.
and generally any type of door and entrance.
Yeah.
And the people with skills to work in that, in both service and manufacture, are very few and far between.
Cool. So hopefully, if you're starting to get the experience, the mindset of mastermind, there was a key part of the phrase that was just shared there that twigged with you slightly. Anyone? Anyone hear what was said there and just go, yeah, but? So the bit I heard was the in our industry. So the mention of there's just not that many good people in our industry. And what's really interesting for us is that we initially thought that we needed to get people into our business who had HR and L&D experience. And so as part of a recent recruitment exercise where we had 500 applicants, we did put that advert in on the SHRM site, which is the big HR site in the US, the equivalent in the UK. And we probably got about 50 applicants through those routes, which is pretty good. But none of them made it to the final cut. Not even our top 7 made it there. And what we realised is we can't rely on the people in the industry. What we have to do is go get the amazing people with the skills, the attitudes, the right values, and then train them on the industry.
That's what I did. So because there was a lack
Cool.
of bodies there,
Yeah.
I stepped outside and just looked for people with the right attitude.
Fantastic.
And I've been through 5.
Yeah.
And they've been anything between 6 and 9 months, and they get eliminated because they're rubbish.
Cool. So what I'm going to cover, hopefully, particularly as we come on to onboarding as well, I want you to think about why is it that they ended up being rubbish? What is it that's either part of your recruitment process that means that they get in and shouldn't have done, and that you find the right thing? Or that your onboarding means that they're not getting to the level that they need to be.
Yeah, it could be that.
Because, for example, for my team, like if I don't train them on HR and learning and development, their demo calls are never going to get above a certain standard because they're not going to be able to relate to my customer. Now, I can't just expect that those guys are suddenly going to become experts in the industry, which means that, guess what, this presentation is part of it. We're developing training for our staff on what great HR looks like. And the great thing is that if you develop it, by the way, it becomes really good content marketing. Because what you develop on the industry of automatic doors and how that's changed over time, and therefore what great looks like and common issues to look out for, your new employees need training up on that, and your customers would really value training on it too. So as a result, it actually works as a double benefit there. Does that help sort of alleviate some of the initial resistance? That was a definite yes. Sure.
Can you say, how would you apply that to an industry where you have to have people with certain qualifications?
Really good question. So I actually work with a training business that has a similar issue, and one of the things, and they've tried various different ways, and one of the things to say with this is that this is a hard area. It's not like, oh, you just wave a magic wand, this bit is easy. Recruitment is hard, and therefore you will have to experiment and try different things. Training business I work with, they've experimented with actually training people up. So they even do like, they did like a weekend like boot camp for trained assessors that come into the organisation. They basically need to be moving up to kind of Ofsted quality assessment in a very short period of time. Now, that's not to say they just take people off the street and get them there, but there are much more people at one level below that. So what they do is they, in fact, I think they've even built it into the recruitment process now. There's part of the recruitment process, they kind of pay for them to be there and then train them up and then take the best ones out of that. I've even seen other businesses that actually their recruitment process involves essentially charging for the training required to get to that level, and then they could even, it happens to be a training business, but if you weren't a training business, you could partner with a training business and maybe even part fund it, as long as you get involved in it, and then you take the best people who get trained as part of that. So that'd be another way of doing it for the qualifications. Another way of doing it would be to actually just cast the net wider and start getting innovative about working setup. So, for example, with a location that they need to be in, or the way in which you're going to attract them into the organisation, so that if perhaps you're in a location where it doesn't have this qualification but London does, then is there anything that you can do to either attract them out of London or get them to be able to work there some of the time or whatever. So there's lots of different ways, but what I know isn't the right answer is just accept poor quality people. Like, that's, of all the innovative solutions and outcomes, that's the one you can't go for. Because in the world of software development, for example, I've often challenged my co-founder, who's heads up our product development and is a coder, on like, do we really need this high level quality? Like, other businesses don't do this. And he helped by finding some research that basically showed that for most organizations, the top 10% of the developers are responsible for basically all the value that's generated. Then 40% kind of even it out, and actually the other 50% are responsible for reducing the value in your business because of wasted time and whatever. And so studies that have been done on this show that when you just accept average people or even below average people, they actually take value from your business rather than provide it. So I encourage you, whatever you do, don't decide that the solution to this problem is just accept rubbish people. Does that make sense? We will come on to that when I come on to management and development, but that's a very real challenge and one that I've faced myself. Because actually any business that is constantly getting better and growing, it's one of two things that's going to happen really. Either your staff outgrow you or you outgrow your staff. Right?
I mentioned before, he talks about A players and you're on the same.
That's right. And in Rob's case, he's had to exit people from that business as well that previously he'd regarded as good enough. But as he raised the bar, they become not good enough. And the reason why recruitment is so important is you don't want to be in a position where you're having to tolerate bad staff because you have no choice. You don't want to be in the position where you're like, oh, well, I can't get anyone else, therefore I'm going to cope with this toxic influence that makes me not want to come to work every day. It's not worth it. And that's why this is a problem that is worthwhile spending mental energy solving. And actually you'd be surprised that once you put the mental energy in, it's not a huge amount of actual time and effort to solve it. The challenge is, more often, is the mental attitude we all have, which is this problem can't be solved. To give an example of that, I remember pretty early on in my mastermind journey with Dan, he challenged me and said, why haven't you got any salespeople in this organisation? Why aren't you doing like calls with customers? So it doesn't work like that, Dan, we tried it. It works far better. They just come online, they sign up, and people who are tech savvy enough to use the tool, etc., they then buy, and it's great. And then he kind of pushed a few mastermind meetings and said, why is it worth trying? So I conceded it might be worth trying. And as a result, I've now just hired 2 full-time permanent essentially salespeople that entirely focus on demos. Our current priority for the next 6 weeks is basically increasing the number of demos we're doing by at least 20%, but we could, with our capacity, we're hoping that we could increase it by double. And I was wrong. But the biggest shift was not the effort to fix all of that, it was the mental shift to say, this is a problem that needs to be solved or can be solved, and I'll find a way. Cool. So, great recruitment involves a high number of applicants, low number of offers per hire. So that means that you're not saying, you know what, you're brilliant, you're absolutely fantastic, I want you in the company, here's the offer, and they go, cool, I'll think about it. And they happen to be interviewing with 3 other competitors, and they go with them. And you have to offer to more people to eventually get someone. That is hugely painful, and I'm pleased to say that currently it's 1 offer, 1 hire. We don't have anyone that gets an offer from us and we then don't hire. And that's because of the process that we take them through in recruitment that I'm going to share with you. You also want reserves of people that you'd hire if you had more vacancies. Something that in Eric Herrenkohl's book, How to Hire A Players, he calls the farm team. So the runners-up in your application process, the ones that you're like, oh, I wish we had 2 vacancies or 3 vacancies, you don't lose them. You keep them as reserves. You keep them on your farm team. And you ideally want that for every role so that you don't have to tolerate bad people. And that constantly you're thinking, yeah, this person, I think they'd be better in this role. And so it helps you as a leader to keep people moving. And finally, low recruitment cost per hire. You don't want to be spending huge amounts of money having to headhunt and whatever to try and find the perfect person. When you do this right in your business and have it set up as a repeatable process, it shouldn't be that expensive. Onboarding. This is what bad onboarding looks like. This is where the person turns up on their first day and they have a desk and a chair and everyone pats themselves on the back that they managed to do that. Anyone experienced that perhaps as an employee going into an organisation where you turn up or been responsible for doing that? Like literally the employee turns up, it's like, oh, you must be John. It's like, it's actually Jean. Jean, that's the one. Yes, hang on, let me find you a desk. Like that is not a great way to bring in amazing talent, and the best people will not stick around if that's the kind of experience they have. They also won't be hyper productive for you. Better onboarding is that you have them set up on day one. You have them with their computer, with their phone, with all the things that they're going to need. Really great onboarding, you actually go well beyond their first day, and you think about what's the journey for this employee for the first month or more. And as a result, and I'd highly recommend that you collect feedback from your new hires on their experience. How do they feel? How happy are they? We actually ask all of our employees every week how happy they are, and if they don't give a 10, we ask them why is that, what could improve, so that we're constantly trying to improve that. And so for us, it's very important that we get happy people, and this person was actually someone who started on Monday this week, and this was what he posted at the end of the day. Thanks for such a friendly and welcoming first day, guys. You're all awesome. See you tomorrow. And that person was a software developer that joined on Monday. By yesterday, was coding and providing real lines of code into our application. Now, I can tell you that when I ask software developers, what's the number, like what would make you happiest? What's the number one thing that you'd like to achieve this week or the first few weeks? For them, it's adding value. And in fact, that's so common. Like we hire amazing people, and the most common thing that they connect happiness to in their first few weeks is they want to be adding value. And they get stressed and unhappy if they're not adding value. I had a member of staff that I basically had to forcibly put on sick because he felt guilty and that he wasn't going to be adding value that day. Because he's only been in the company like 3-4 weeks. And as a result was kind of feeling like, I don't want to be off. But one of our values is about enjoying the journey and looking after each other, and so that was important how to do it. So great employees want to add value, you need to help them to do that. Also, you need a short period of time before employees are adding significant value in a new role. You don't want them to be taking 12 weeks or longer to get to a point where they're adding that value. There's a lot of statistics around the cost of losing someone. And the figure at the moment, I think, is something like £36,000 is the cost of losing someone that you didn't want to lose. And most of that cost actually doesn't relate to recruitment. It relates to the fact that the average amount of time it takes for a new starter to be adding value in the business is 26 weeks. It's like, so hang on, if I reduce that down so that I've got staff that are adding significant value in 4 weeks, then actually the cost of replacing someone is only that 4 weeks of time, not 26. So you want them adding value. How about bad management and development? So this is what bad management and development looks like. For those of you that can't read it, it says, so you've got Dogbutz, the consultant. He says, your profits are plunging. The problem will not be easy to solve. And he's got a flip chart that says brains, competitors, beavers, and you is the smallest one. And so the manager's response is, so what do we do? Cut the training budget again? And unfortunately, that is the common attitude of a lot of managers, which is that if we're struggling as a business, let's stop spending money on developing our staff. It's often the training budget's the first thing to go. Better training, better management and development actually involves management through metrics and understanding what good looks like and what your targets are and how you're performing against this. And by the way, we review this every day. This is a few of the members of my team. But importantly, it's not always me or my co-founder presenting this. At the start of every day, there's a little note that comes onto Slack saying who's going to be today's moderator. And guess who volunteered yesterday? Yep, it was that guy who started on Monday. So we had a brand new staff member leading our cross-company daily huddle yesterday, talking us through our stats and how we were doing against targets. Now that's better management development, where everyone understands what you're working towards, what the targets are, and that you're not sort of doing it to the staff, but instead having the staff lead this. So great management and development looks like this. You have people hitting KPIs, so any targets that you're setting, they're hitting them, or they're improving and then they're hitting them, or they're leaving. Great staff don't stay in businesses that they can see they're not adding value to. And if you're not making your targets and the KPIs visible to your staff, then they will leave. They will get fed up of not knowing what the score is, whether they're adding value, and your best people will leave. And that's one of the contributing factors that led to my loss early on this year. But actually, the best staff will also, they want to improve. If they're not hitting the numbers, they'll work with you to try and improve it. And if they're not good members of staff in performance terms, but you've got the right values mix and you're managing and developing them well, they'll actually leave by their own accord. And I know that Dan, as part of Mastermind, has shared multiple stories from his own business of where he sat down with the person and kind of talked about the sales figures, and eventually that person, you don't have the third conversation. You don't have to do the verbal warning, written warning, because by the time that you're getting to that last step, they've already been looking for an alternative job because they know they're not adding value. Great management and development also looks like 0 regrettable losses. You don't want people in your business that are leaving that you would have liked to have kept. An example for me was early this year, which led to us making some huge changes. Low non-attendance. You don't want people taking sickies. I gave the example of someone in my team yesterday who I had to encourage to take a sickie and was back today saying, I've still got a bit of a cold, but keen to get back on it. So you can measure attendance to identify whether that's an issue, but you probably can see it in your business if it's already an issue. You should have high revenue per employee ratio. This is something we're not yet measuring to the level that we should. We use it when we're planning on whether to hire a member of staff. So we work out how much money we believe that will generate and whether we think that's plausible and so on. And we tend to use a 2.5 times ratio. So we're expecting 2.5 times revenue for the money that we spend on them. And it will vary based on industry and whatever. But it's worth measuring it and looking to improve it. You want happy employees. I mentioned that we collect feedback every week. I highly recommend that. In fact, quick question. Who in this room is collecting feedback from employees on basically how happy they are at least once a year? Let's go for. Okay, not quite half. And in those cases where it's at least once a year, anyone doing it once a month or more often? 2, 3. Okay, cool. So that's good. Really good practice, and I highly recommend that others consider doing that, because if you don't measure it, you won't be able to do anything about it when it's going down. Also, employees take on responsibility regularly, and that you get great feedback on the culture. And the culture is something that's really changed for us. We didn't used to do daily huddle calls. We didn't used to really do weekly team meetings. Our personal coaching calls were few and far between, and as a result, we didn't really have a great feeling in the team. It wasn't a happy place to be, despite that being one of the things that when Dan would ask me in Masterminds, what's the target on the wall? And I'd say, there's these 3 or 4 things, one of those we're all enjoying working together, and yet we weren't. And that was such an easy thing to fix. And so I'll talk about how to do that. But as a result, we have a really happy team that really engaged, despite the fact that we only see each other in person once a year. This is a team that love each other, right? At the meetup that we had, you had people saying it's the best trip they'd ever had, could really feel the love and being part of this. And I share these because they were specific ones from like the WhatsApp group when we did the meetup. But actually, this isn't as a result of all just going to Barcelona or having fun. This is the result of having amazing talent in the company that we engaged around common sets of goals through workshops, and that we set up, and that the whole time, before, during, after this meetup, has been focused on how do we make this an amazing culture that people love and that they engage with. And this is an example of a meetup that happened before, a huddle that happened before they'd all met in person. And requires too much explanation to go into why he's got Go Team written on the bottom of his mug and why everyone was laughing at that. But this is a team that really enjoy working together and that I love being part of. And that's something I want to share with you. Is not to say, I'm not boasting to say, hey, look how great it is in my team. I'm sharing it, say, how good would you feel if you had this in your business? Like, what would it mean for your business performance, but also just your enjoyment if you had a team that had that better culture and if you had the right people in your team, okay? Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. So I've talked about what great HR looks like and helping you to kind of raise that bar in terms of your expectations. Any questions on that before I delve into how do you get that great level? Sure.
Just a quick one. How long, I mean, it all sounds fantastic what you've done, really well
Yeah.
done. How long did it take from like realisation that you need to do that to actually get into the level you're at now with it all, and with the like resource, i.e. the man hours that you put into it?
Yeah, so I would say, so it depends on which bit. So I'm going to lay this out like a roadmap for you, various things to put in, and I'll tell you which order to then do it in. But we've done it more haphazard, related to problems. But an example of the staff member who handed in her notice at the end of February, well, the fact that it's since February that we've gone from me not seeing that staff member every day and her feeling very disconnected to that team is, I mean, that's only 8 months. And actually, when did we have that in really? In fact, I've got a feeling it was only a few weeks after she handed in her notice that we had the wake-up call and went, yeah, we should be having daily meeting, daily all company 15-minute huddles. So a lot of the things you could be putting in now, like I did a presentation at one of Dan's one of the mastermind events that we have. I was thinking there might have even been attendees at that, but not in this room. But I did it on Meeting Pulse, which is something that I'm going to talk about shortly. And I know business owners that implemented that 1 week later. So if you include everything, if you say, oh, well, the recruitment, the onboarding, and the management and development, I think that actually you could, depending on the size of the business, you could have it in 3 months, right? Depending on how much time you put into it and where you were quick to make some decisions. But certainly some of it, like 20%, 40%, 50%, you could have in the next month. And it's you'll see when I go through some of it, like it doesn't take that much time to really put this stuff in. Probably the one that's the hardest and took the longest is probably the recruitment one, which I'll cover in detail as to what that looks like. But again, even for that one, there's some things that you can do on the way. It's like any part of your business. If you wanted to change your marketing, you don't need to go, right, delete all marketing assets and funnels that we've been using for the last 5 years. We're creating a new one. In fact, that'd be a really bad approach. It's far better to make little tweaks, and so you can do it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Sure.
That's a very quick one. We often struggle with strategies for part-time staff and contractors. Is that something that we'll be covering?
Yeah, not specifically, but it applies exactly the same. And in fact, I'd encourage you, don't treat part-time staff and contractors as different. Because what happens is you create the second-class thing, and then they just never, they never perform and never at the level. I used to do that with bookkeepers, HR assistants, personal assistants, etc. And I even had a bookkeeper who there was a particular, I don't know what caused it, I think perhaps there was an error in the account, so I was like, oh, that's strange. And I looked in and she hadn't done any work for 8 months. And it was like, oh, okay. And then I tried to contact her and never heard from her again. That could have been avoided if I was treating her like a proper member of the team. And that's not to say that she has to be having the same frequency of the meetings. So maybe she's having it once a week or once a month rather than once a day, depending on her hours, because if she was ending 2 or 3 or 4 hours a month for me, it's not appropriate. But certainly one of the things that we've found is that we've become less keen on part-time arrangements because we've learned that you basically do the same thing with them. And therefore the time they spend being managed by you is the same whether they're half-time or full-time. And therefore what you're doing is just losing the hours that they could otherwise be doing productive work. And so when I first hired our first salesperson, I mentioned the story earlier, they were working 20 hours a week. I've just hired, or back at start of September, I've just hired 2 people starting on the same day, both 40 hours a week. Now, in terms of what that means in terms of sales conversations they can have, it doesn't double it because I've got 2 people rather than 1 person. It doesn't even quadruple it because they're both full-time rather than part-time. We worked it out, it's 8 times more sales capacity that we have as a result of paying for 4 times the hours. Oh, and by the way, the cost of that part-time person versus the full-time, it wasn't like, oh, it's just double. In fact, I think it worked out as only 25% more in real terms to have someone full-time rather than half-time, and we were getting like 4 times the availability. It's crazy. And that was, again, something that Dan advised me not to do. And I said, well, no, I think we want to go low risk. We're going to go part-time. And actually, when I think back, it was higher risk to go part-time. We'd have been better going full-time there. But it still applies, right? And so that's something to think about. So let's start with recruitment. Great recruitment is great marketing, right? Take that away on its own and you will improve your recruitment. If you just apply how great I'm sure you are at your marketing to your recruitment, you will already get huge results. And the reason for that is these 5 reasons. 1, you need clarity on the ideal person for your organisation. Just like with your marketing, who's your ideal customer, who's your ideal candidate that you want in your organisation. You need a strong proposition. It's not enough just to chuck an advert up there that goes, these are the responsibilities you'll have. Want a job? You will be paid competitively, right? That's like the most common advert is, here's a long list of 20 bullet points of things you shall do, and we'll tell you that your salary might be 20 grand or whatever. Instead, you want a strong proposition. You wouldn't do that for customers. You wouldn't say, we have a product that provides the following features, it's £50 a month. You would tailor it. You'd take them on a journey. You'd get them bought into the why it matters, why you care. And the same thing applies to your recruitment process. You need to get people to buy in based on values and your vision, not the specific activities they're going to do. I mentioned before, you need a high number of quality people, just like your marketing. You wouldn't accept it with your marketing if you said, oh yeah, we're getting 5 sales a week. Okay, how many leads are you getting? 10. It's like, so you're getting only 10 leads and you managed to convert half of them, well done. It's like, yeah, but we're accepting some really rubbish clients. They're real pains in the ass. It's like, you wouldn't do it. You'd increase the number of leads that you have, and you need to do the same for your candidates. You need multiple steps in the funnel. You need to be able to identify whether they're the right fit, but also you need to hyper engage them around your business. You want them to really want to work for you so that you're not making offers that they then reject. You want them to be in a position where they really want to work for you. And you want nurturing campaigns so that those that nearly went ahead get kept. I mentioned the farm team earlier. So here's 7 ways that at Spider Gap we do this. And I'll just go back 1 slide because I can see people frantically writing this down, which is a good plan. But what I'm going to do is show you 7 ways in which Spider Gap does this different to other companies. I'm not saying we're the best company that does this ever. I'm not saying that we've got it perfect. There's loads of things we are still improving. I've been making changes to our processes over the last few days, never mind weeks, months or years. However, here's 7 things that I think you'll look at and go, okay, yeah, no one does that. Like no other company goes to that level. And that's not to say you should do exactly the same, but what I want you to do is think about some of the approaches or tactics that we're putting in place to help get the kind of results that I've described. Does that make sense? Cool. So, first way, strong advert. We don't just give a list of those 20 bullet points. We go heavy on what we're doing, why this is a good opportunity, what we aim to do, and therefore what our vision is. Below here, you'd have our values, so our 5 core values and why that's key. You'd have a bit about the role, but a lot about fit. Like, answer these questions. If you're someone that feels this, if you're someone that feels this. We often get applicants saying, why I want to work for you, a cover letter. I read through the 11 questions and the answer is a firm yes to every single one. And we do talk about the benefits, but not just the salary. There's about 14 bullet points that cover everything from the flexible working through to the fact that we give a £30 a month allowance for purchasing books, because one of our core values is always be improving. So we look for people who are big on personal development and like reading, whether it's audiobooks or whatever. It talks about our £75 a month gym contribution, because we're big on work-life balance and so on, and enjoying the journey and quality of life. So it talks about all of those things in the advert. And I've shared my advert with other people. You know what they say? Bit long. Guess what the candidates say? Wow, transparent. I was hooked. And for the right people, they will read it all. We post it in the right places. We don't just post it in one place. We post it in lots of places, and we measure where our best candidates come from, and we use that in subsequent recruitment exercises. For a software developer, for example, we put it on a frequently used software developer site. You know, not people that are searching for jobs. People who are doing day-to-day work. We put it on a remote job site, so people who are looking for remote work. We put it on a site where people are interested in working for startups, which, because we're a small business, we put it on, and another one that's frequently software developer site, because you shouldn't just put it in one place. Just like your marketing. You wouldn't take an advert and put it in one place and go, that'll be fine. You try it in lots of different places and test and keep on improving it. We then have an application form that enables us to screen in 20 seconds. It's really funny when a candidate says, wow, how do you read 2,500 CVs? We don't. In fact, we even had a software developer that said to his manager a few weeks ago, he said, yeah, I've got some deep experience in this particular thing. And the manager goes, wow, really? He's like, yeah, but you know that, you read my CV. He's like, well, I didn't read your CV. We don't read the CVs generally as part of the recruitment process, unless there's like or they're on the fence kind of situation. Instead, we use application forms that ask specific questions. We don't want people's boilerplate answers. We want them to think. We want them to be super engaged in this process. And only the best people actually spend time answering a question like this. Tell me about a feature of SpiderGap's 360 feedback tool you really like and why. Do you know some of the worst answers I've had? 1, I haven't yet used SpiderGap, but I look forward to. They've not done the research. Number 2, I haven't used Podia yet, but from what I've seen on the website, it looks good. Wrong company name. They haven't even looked at the right tool. Good user experience. They're not giving enough. They're not showing attention to detail. We filter 90% of applicants out at that stage. It takes 20 seconds to review those. We also look at whether or not they're keen on personal development. People who answer the question on tell me about a technical book or article with, to be honest, I'm not a big reader, they're not a good fit for us. So they don't stay in the process. We do sure. The next step in the process after that application form is a coding test. It takes only 2 minutes for a developer to review and gives us a really good feel for whether they know what they're doing. Again, in this case, only 2% of applicants pass through. So if you're thinking, how the hell do you pass through 2,500 applicants? I'm going to need a massive recruitment team. Nope. I have a virtual assistant who does this bit based on a scoring criteria that we give them. And a developer does this, and each one takes about 2 minutes, and spread over a few weeks is fine. It takes a bit of time, but it's worth it. Then they have an interview with me to evaluate whether they're the right values fit, but also I hyper engage them so that they're really keen to join and that they're not really going out and looking for lots of other opportunities. It's not uncommon that we have people who basically end up holding out for us rather than going and looking elsewhere. And all the way through the process, we're super nice and prompt with our email responses, just like you would be with your marketing. We don't let people hang on the line thinking, oh, well, they want the job. If they want the job, they're going to have to wait. No, we treat them like we would our customers. And so they get really nice responses, and we get really lovely emails from our rejected candidates. And please to consider. People asking, oh, you know, I've had messages that practically bring me to tears because they're talking about like how I want to be, like I've had this literally written, I want to be clear, I only want to work for SpiderGap. Like, how did our recruitment process do that to them? And I practically feel bad, right, because they're not the right fit in the organisation. But that's the level that we get them to in the same way as you'd aim to with your marketing. You want them in a position where they only want your product, they don't want to consider the alternatives. We also work with them before they join. With software developers, we give them a project that's going to take 10 to 20 hours, and we pay them $25 per hour for the time that they spend on it, and it means that we get an opportunity to see what they really like to work with. A recent software developer application or recruitment round, we had 2 candidates at the final stage. One that was sharper, like technical knowledge better than the other one, and we thought he's going through. And then we worked together, and he basically went quiet for long periods, and then would suddenly bounce up with, here's all the work. The other guy would check in regularly. He'd check his understanding. He'd come back to us with the requirements. He'd define the stories that he's developing and then work on it. Who do you want to work with? The star, who you don't hear from for days, and then could find out that he's done the wrong thing, or the guy who is passionate about development, is really, really good, but checks in regularly. And so that's the person that we hired. So you'd only find that out from getting to work with them a bit. And I do the same for my sales and customer success team. I do a tricky customer call with them. I get them to answer a pretend support query, and I get them to write a help article. We see how they actually would work. And the best people we invite to the bench, the farm team. This isn't our farm team, it's not a physical bench, this was in Barcelona. But we keep them updated. I've recently just had a series of calls with all the people on our farm team, telling them what our objectives were for the last, telling them what we've done over the last 6 weeks, what our objectives are. Sure, so basically at the end of the recruitment process, or in fact, we tell them this throughout. We say, if you're successful through this process, obviously you get the role. However, if you're close, but you're not in, we've only got 2 vacancies for this role, it's possible that, let's say you come 3rd or 4th, then what we'd want to do is hire you at some point. So what we'd like to do, what we would invite you to do at that point, is to join what we call our farm team, where we'll keep you updated as to what we're doing, and if a vacancy then comes up, we can reach out to you and see if that's something that's then still a good fit. And if not, fine. But if so, fantastic. I don't need to repeat the same recruitment process all over again. Now, for my sales and customer success team, I just told you earlier that we're planning on doing a load of stuff on marketing and trying to double the number of demos we're doing. If that works and I find I can scale it even further, I've currently got 5 people on the bench for that role that I would hire tomorrow if I could. I don't have to wait 3 months. It's great. And not all of them would be available. In fact, right now, all of them are available because I speak to them every 12 weeks and update them via email 6 weeks in, so that they're always kept in the loop and we keep the conversations back and forth. So that's what we do. Yeah, sure.
When you say a potential new person, they do some work, is that real work in the business or is it a project that just goes to you?
Depends. Sometimes it's a test task that is very made up for the purposes of assessment. Sometimes it is something that actually helps us with the business. More often the former, because doing the latter, it can often take more time to set it up so it adds value than doesn't. And of course the main aim is to work out what it's like to work with them. That said, the challenge that we set them is often a real one in the business. So it might be something we're not planning on working on for quite a while, or it might be something that we've actually previously worked on and solved, but it helps that it's real enough. So the tricky customer call, I'm like a real tricky customer that we've had. The support query is a real support query we've had. The help article is a real help article that at one point needed creating. And so we do use real things, but we don't always try and time it perfectly because that can be more. No worries. Sure.
Would you be willing to share the advert, the questionnaire, the email that you send to the ones on the bench?
Some of it's already available. So if you went to, in fact, if you search for Spider Gap jobs, you'd probably go and find the adverts, or at least I'd hope that we're searchable enough that you'd find the adverts and so on. So feel free to do that. One caveat, of course, is make it your own. Take the lessons and the structure, but completely avoid using the content because part of the value and why it works is it's very us. The whole point is that connection, like in your marketing messages. It doesn't work to just take someone's carbon copy and then use your own. Because it doesn't then align, and in fact even more so for recruitment than with marketing. So you can take a look there. In terms of the email for the farm team, it's no more clever than basically explaining, really, really sorry. Unfortunately, we're not able to hire you at this time. However, the good news is that if you would like to, you can, we'd like to invite you to join the farm team. Here's what we mean by that, and in fact, it's got a link to the Eric Herron-Cole article about it, and so on. But that's very us, and that's the way that we would operate to do that. So does that help?
I was thinking more in line with the final questionnaire when you sieve through the applications?
Yes.
And get the applications from 1,000 to maybe 10 people.
Yeah, so as I say, if you went onto the advert now and clicked on the apply button, you'd find the application form. Cool. And if that becomes either difficult to find or that we've removed it by the time that you remember to access it 6 months from now, then I'm going to give my email address at the end and feel free to contact me. Cool.
What's that link to that thing, Eric?
Eric Herenkohl, Herrenkohl. But if you search for how to hire A players, I think he'll come up as the author of that book. Cool. Okay. Tight on time. So, what can I cut?
What's the name of the book?
How to hire A players. Cool. So I have gone deep into recruitment, and I'm going to. Yeah, we've got about 25 minutes left, but we do want to make sure that we've got some time for Q&A. So I'll speed up in some places, but feel free to continue to ask me questions. What I will say is if I do time out on some of this and have to cut large swathes, then I'll make sure that via Dan we get the opportunity to perhaps share some of the materials. I've already mentioned that this, I'll tell you right now, yesterday I spoke to my co-founder. I said I'm doing a presentation tomorrow. One of the objectives for me is to test it, to identify what the questions I get asked so that we can improve it and turn it into content marketing, which is one of our targets for the next 6 months, is to create best practice and turn it into content marketing. Now, the good news for you guys is it means relatively soon this will be turned into a nice standalone package of PDFs and tools, probably with some example adverts and application forms and so on. So, hit me up at my email address and I'll make sure we share that when that's available. Cool. Great onboarding. Onboarding is all about process. Recruitment's about marketing. Onboarding's about process. Getting really good at the checklist. Okay, a lot to cover here. Your onboarding process needs to do a few things. It needs to make the admin super easy so that you can focus the time on spending time with a new employee. You don't want to be spending all day on the employee's first day doing admin-y stuff. You want to spend time with them and helping them understand it. Secondly, you need to give that new hire valuable stuff to read in advance of joining. Really amazing people want to start learning, and frankly, they'd like to start working before their start date. I wouldn't recommend getting them working before then, but certainly you can have them learning. Every new starter that I've had through the recruitment process we have, they have already read our security policy, and because we're big on security, because we're online data, online software with data of tens of thousands of employees all over the world, so GDPR is big, etc. We have a pretty significant security policy and a 45-minute security training / review that they do on day one. They come day one already having read the policy and already having implemented it on their systems and phones. They have strong passwords, they have 8-digit pins on their phones, they've set up encryption and firewalls and everything. You imagine having to do that on day one with them, it would take all day. They've already done it because we've given them the pre-reading. Many of them have also bought books that we've recommended that they read, including on the industry. So if they're like, oh, but I've never worked in HR before, and they're coming to us halfway through the book Powerful by Patty McCord from Netflix, for example. It's amazing. So do give them stuff. You should also set expectations in advance. We send an email about a week or two before they join, telling them what's going to happen on their first day, the first week, the first month, so that they know exactly what's going to happen. And we then over-deliver on that. So we have everything ready, we provide checklists to make it easy for them, we make sure their manager's ready, we make sure there's regular catch-ups set up, including with their buddy. Now again, to the question that was asked earlier, this isn't that difficult to do. Like the next time you onboard an employee, write down a list of the things that you have to do, and then next time when you're going to onboard someone, look at that list a few weeks before they join and work out what could be done in advance, what could be automated more easily, etc. Kick off that employee development. Show them in that first week that developing them is something that matters to you, and don't leave that as something that comes up. Oh, it's been a year. We better have a performance discussion. All of our employees do a self-assessment using our 360 feedback tool to identify where do they think their own strengths and weaknesses are as they relate to our core values. And continuously improve the process. This isn't something that stays still. This isn't something we got perfect from day one. In fact, Here's 3 things that we've changed in the last few months. In fact, in some cases it's days. Number 1, we never arrange for a new hire to start on a Monday. Monday clashes with all of our team meetings. And this is not to say you shouldn't have them start on a Monday, but for us, all of our weekly team meetings basically happen on a Monday. It's a very busy day, and on Monday, I told you I had a new member of staff. It was very difficult. As a result, decision made, updated the onboarding checklist earlier on as part of the hiring process. When you're agreeing a start date, it now says, pick a date, must not be a Monday, so it avoids clashing meetings. That's why it's awesome when you've got this written down as a checklist, because you can go back earlier in the process and catch it next time round. We have step-by-step guides. We use a tool called Process Street, where all of these steps, you can see this is down to like step 39 of our onboarding one, so it goes way up here, with all of those steps, including agreeing start date, etc. And right down to the level of detail of this is how to set up these tools, so that it's easy, so that we don't have to spend loads of ages going, oh my god, this user experience of this particular tool, for example, Office 365 is a nightmare. We now have screenshots that show exactly how to do it, so that me, because I do it at the moment, or anyone else would be able to set up the onboarding for a new member of staff.
Where do you do that? What software have you built that?
This is a tool called Process Street, but I know other people that use things like Asana. You know, you could use Trello, you could use anything, right? Yeah. I mean, there's loads of tools. Ultimately, what we're looking for is a checklist here. Frankly, you could have a Word document that you print out and tick. We find out what gifts they appreciate before they join. In that email where we set the expectations, one of the things that we ask is that they fill in a form telling us, well, how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much would you appreciate a bottle of champagne, some flowers, an Amazon voucher, your favourite drink, tell us what your favourite drink is. Surprisingly, some of the last hires we've had, one of the things that they've identified is that their favourite drink is whiskey, which makes it really easy, because I love whiskey. So I spend a little bit of time on Amazon searching out some whiskies and send them one. And so they get the developer that started on Monday, yesterday at 6 p.m, because Amazon now does late delivery, he received a bottle of whiskey to welcome him to the team. Cool, there? And we know he likes it, because he told us. But we also didn't go, what do you want? What do you like? Good, okay, there you are. It was disconnected enough that it comes across as thoughtful. And guess what? 3 months, 1 year from now, when we want to give him another gift, we know what else he'd enjoy. I also know that he'd like IPAs, for example, so we could get him a 6-pack of IPA, right? So that's onboarding, cool. And Dan, for your benefit, I'm running probably 7 minutes late, so we'll still have 10 minutes for Q&A, if that's okay. But we've had quite a few questions already. So management and development. Getting this great is all about rhythm and guidance. So, great recruitment was great. Began with M. Marketing. Thank you very much. Great onboarding was great. Began with P. Marvellous. Great management and development is rhythm and guidance. Rhythm. This was the flamenco show that we took the team to in Barcelona. Rhythm helps you stay aligned. What do I mean by rhythm? Well, this band here in the background, most of this show is improvised. Amazing show. If you're ever in Barcelona, I recommend seeing it. It's one of those things that's incredibly touristy and everyone will tell you not to, and yet then you go and go, it's amazing. But these guys, they're improvising. How do they do that? How do they keep everyone aligned? It's all down to rhythm. There is a rhythm that everyone is holding in the team, and as a result, they can all align to it. Even if someone messes up, they can stop and rejoin. If I had good rhythm in my business, I wouldn't have a bookkeeper that I didn't have any contact with for 8 months. Because you can set up meeting rhythm. You can have particular meetings that happen on particular days and weeks and months, and you can repeat that. So that you have that rhythm of day, 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 week, 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 month. And you can keep up that rhythm with different agendas and purposes of each of those meetings. For example, at Spider Gap, this is a little snapshot of how our structure works. We work on a 6-weekly cycle. And so you can see that every 6 weeks, everyone gets a one-to-one coaching call. And this is an example. It's not always on a Tuesday, although it's often on a Tuesday. I remember the member of staff that was ill yesterday. His was meant to be yesterday. It's now moved to Thursday. That's fine. But he's having it every 6 weeks. We have a 15-minute daily team call and a 15-minute daily huddle. In fact, my team will have had their daily cross-company daily huddle at 12:36 today. 15 minutes where there's a very specific agenda of what we review, and I mentioned before that our new developer ran it yesterday. Very, defined guidance on what to do. We have weekly cross-team wave calls. If you've ever had that problem in the team, it's like sales don't talk to operations, operations don't talk to finance, etc. We force it. Every week, everyone in the organisation has a conversation with someone on another side of the business. And we even have guidance to help them not have a really stunted conversations. There's some suggested icebreaker questions, etc. And they have that every week. And we have a 6-weekly exec review to help us review where we've come and where we're going. And then that feeds back into week 1, where we then review it as part of the weekly meeting, etc. And this, to the question that was asked before, like how easy is this to set up? Really easy. It'd take you, 15, 20 minutes to design this for your team. 10 minutes to share it with them and get their feedback, 5 minutes to make some tweaks, 15 minutes or 5 minutes to pass it to a team member to set it up as a regular recurring appointment in your calendars. Done. So we never suddenly realise that we've not had a coaching call or team catch up for ages, which we definitely used to. We also give an agenda for every meeting with guidance on exactly how to use the time. We don't leave anything to chance. We never waste time in our meetings as a result. The meeting is either very quick, like our huddles, or we get a lot of work done. A 90-minute meeting with my team every week, 25 minutes of it is a review. Like review the KPIs, review our progress against our key projects, reviewing key client and employee headlines, and that's it. And then, and reviewing the previous to-do list. And then the rest of it is, okay, so based on that, what are the biggest issues we now need to solve? Demos is down. Conversion rates are a worry. We've got a high number of no-shows. And we spend most of the time working on those issues.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Why 12:36?
Yeah, I often get asked that question. It's often said that, I think there's a guy in the military that says on time is 5 minutes late. And the problem is that if you set a meeting for 12:30, people get out of their chairs to go to the meeting at 12:30. If you set it for 12:36 and you're clear that the meeting starts at 12:36 with or without you, people move at 12:30 and get ready for the meeting to start at 12:36. So there's a psychology aspect of it, but also other people's meetings, demo calls, etc. often might be arranged to end at 12:30, and therefore you're then okay. So we give guidance to the team, which means that they're empowered to take the lead. I mentioned the developer able to run and moderate the huddle call yesterday. That's because there's a step-by-step guide on exactly how to do it. We give guidance on how to do their personal coaching call. The manager doesn't run the one-to-one coaching call every 6 weeks. The employee does. The manager attends it, listens to what's being said, asks questions and challenges. It's down to the employee using the template to work out what they're really doing. Okay? We also give guidance for the managers, which includes telling them, it says here, in fact this is about the 360, it tells them how to set up the 360, but I think the very next line under here would show you like during the one-to-one coaching call, the employee should be leading it, and this is what you should be doing. So we don't rely on managers' experience. Why? Because I was an awful manager. I was the sort of person that couldn't cope with this. And so by having this guidance, it makes it super easy. Because I'm actually a good coach, or a fairly good coach. I can be a little overeager. But this helps me. And everyone gets scores, performance scores, after every one-to-one every 6 weeks. Which means that no one is in any doubt over how they're doing or where they most need to improve. Everyone is clear on that. And if you're below the bar, multiple coaching calls in a row, then you're likely to be leaving, right? And often on their own volition. So, I've covered a lot there in terms of what we've done and how to change it, and I appreciate that what I've given you could take you, depending on the business, up to 3 years to implement, depending if you've got a huge business with 250 staff or whatever, then maybe it will take longer. However, I suspect that it probably won't. I think once you get started, you'll start realising how easy some of this can be. So what I want to give you is an indication of where you should start. And I recommend you start with the end. the end of my presentation was about management and development. And management development comes down to great, anyone remember, began with R? Rhythm, thank you very much, star student so far. And G? Guidance. Awesome, there you go. Everyone wants to be star student now, there you go. Rhythm and guidance. And so that's where I recommend that you start. Because if you bring in amazing talent via your great recruitment process, and then you onboard them well with a really great process, but then you fail to keep managing and developing them, then they'll either struggle to grow or improve and continue to provide great performance for you, and they may leave. And that's what I had with the employee that I had early on this year. This problem, the recruitment, we solved back in 2016. The onboarding came in 2017, but we didn't solve this really properly until the start of this year. There was some stuff in place, but not to the level we have now. And as a result, we lost someone that was really good. So, specifically, what I recommend that you take as your first steps, and obviously there might be some of these that you've already done, but I recommend that you challenge yourself as to whether you've done them to the level that I've described. Start by establishing a regular meeting rhythm. What are you doing every day? What are you doing every week? What's everyone joining to make sure they're all aligned? Set agendas and provide guidance for every meeting. Don't leave them up to chance. Don't end up with a team that end up going, oh God, I'm always in meetings and we never get anything done. That's not an acceptable use of the meeting. It should be really clear how you get the value out of it. And you should continuously improve that. And also, I'd then suggest you set up tools and resources to support continuous improvement. One would be an issue tracker, so some way in which you capture problems that people identify. For example, we seem to have a declining number of leads come into the business, or we've been late on the last 3 shipments, or our accounts receivable seems to be increasing, or we've got a cash flow issue. Have somewhere that is captured and shared with all staff and reviewed as part of your regular meetings, so that you're regularly tackling those issues. We capture all of our issues, and I know that yesterday we solved 33. Our average is 20. Yesterday was a bit of an issue bashing session. I recommend putting regular 360 feedback. Of course I do. That's my business. That's what I do. The benefit of it is that it essentially solves half of your staff development problem, because it puts the onus on them. It allows them to own the process of identifying where do they most need to improve based on the feedback from others, including their manager. And as a result, they get a report with a template for, okay, what's my current performance, what's my target performance, what actions am I going to take, how am I going to measure it? And as long as you've got your meeting rhythm to review that and discuss that with them, they can own that process. So I recommend checking it out. Additional benefit, you get 10 free 5 free assessments. So if you've got a team of fewer than 5 people, then you'll be able to do it for free anyway. But are worth checking it out. Or even if you review it and go, I can do my own thing, fine, but find somewhere in which you're doing it. I also recommend creating some kind of recommended reading list. The point that was mentioned before about industry knowledge, you know what's worth reading and what's not. We know what the best books are to read on 360s and what are the ones that are worse than, are not even good as toilet paper. That's worth sharing with the team, because your best talent will want to read them. Then, only once you've done this, do I recommend that you start then revisiting what I've shared with you on onboarding and recruitment. Does that make sense? Cool. And of course, if you have any questions at any point, or you want access to examples of stuff that we've done, I'm sure I'm going to turn this prettier set once I've been supported by my co-founder of PDFs and so on that I can share with you. So feel free to email me at this email address. And that's all from me. Go over to questions.
Good. First of all, give a round of applause for Alexis.
Thank you.